Have you ever been pushed so far by people in power that they thought they could crush you? Imagine being told you don't belong in your own home. Imagine getting letters, threats, and warnings every single week from people who believe they control everything. That's what happened to me. But here's the part they never saw coming. I had a secret card they didn't even know existed. A card so powerful that when I revealed it, their entire world collapsed. This is the story of how the HOA tried to evict me without realizing I actually owned their bank. The pressure begins. It all started with the HOA board. If you've ever lived under an HOA, you probably already know the type of people who run it. They walk around with clipboards, measuring lawns, complaining about fences, and writing letters over the smallest things. Well, in my case, it wasn't just small things. They had a personal mission to kick me out. At first, it began with petty complaints. My mailbox was not regulation. My car was too old for their community image. My grass was half an inch too tall. I brushed it off, like most people do. But then it escalated. They started sending formal violation notices with fines attached. They threatened legal action. They threatened foreclosure. And eventually, the letter came that made my blood boil, an official notice of eviction. That's right. They wanted me out of my own home. The board's power trip. I couldn't believe the arrogance. Who were these people to decide who gets to stay and who doesn't? The HOA had a reputation in the neighborhood for being ruthless. They had bullied other homeowners before, fined people into bankruptcy, and even forced a single mom to sell her house because she couldn't keep up with their constant penalties. But me? I wasn't about to roll over and let them do the same thing to me. You see, the board thought they had all the power. They believed that once they sent that eviction notice, I'd either run scared or try to negotiate. What they didn't realize is that I had been paying attention for years. And I knew something about this HOA that even their president didn't know. My secret weapon. Here's the part that sounds unbelievable, but it's 100% true. The HOA had their money, their fines, and their community funds stored in a local credit union. That's normal. What wasn't normal was the fact that I had quietly bought up controlling shares in that very credit union years ago. That's right. I didn't just have an account there. I had ownership. So while they thought they were draining my wallet with fines, they were actually feeding money into a bank that I had control over. Every transaction, every fund, every financial move the HOA made, it all passed through an institution I had authority in. And when they finally crossed the line by trying to evict me, I knew it was time to use the one card they never saw coming. The turning point. The day of the HOA meeting came. They had invited me to plead my case, but I already knew the outcome. Their smug faces made it clear. They thought this was a final nail in the coffin. The president leaned forward, tapping his pen like a judge. Mr. Last name, you have failed to meet community standards. You have ignored repeated fines. This board has voted unanimously to evict you. You have 30 days to vacate. The room went silent. The other board members smirked. Neighbors shifted nervously in their chairs. Everyone expected me to argue, maybe even beg for mercy. But instead, I smiled. Are you finished? I asked calmly. The president frowned. Excuse me? I leaned forward. You're evicting me? That's cute. But before you get too comfortable, maybe you should ask where your operating account is being held. Maybe you should ask who actually owns the bank that manages every cent of your HOA's money. The smirks disappeared. The silence deepened. And for the first time, I saw fear flash across the president's face. Exposing the truth. I pulled out a folder. Inside were documents proving my ownership stake in the credit union. Not only that, but I also had full authority to freeze accounts, review financial records, and restrict access. Every dollar you find me, every check you've written, every cent you've saved, it's all tied to a bank I control. I said, and you're trying to evict me? One of the board members stuttered. That's impossible. I pushed the documents across the table. See for yourself. So go ahead, file your eviction. But know this, the moment you do, your HOA won't have access to its money. Not for landscaping, not for security, not even for your little board meetings. You'll be broke before you can even file the paperwork. Their world collapses. The color drained from their faces. The president tried to stay firm, but his hands trembled as he flipped through the papers. The other members whispered, panic rising in the room. They had built their entire empire on fear, but now that empire was crumbling in front of them. You can't do this, the president muttered. I smiled again. Actually, I can, and I already did. Your accounts are frozen as of this morning. Gasps filled the room. Neighbors looked at me with wide eyes, some covering their mouths, others whispering, "Is this real?" Oh, it was real, and it felt glorious. Why, I fought back. Let me pause here, because I know some of you might be thinking, why go this far? Why not just fight them legally? The answer is simple. Bullies don't stop when you play by their rules. Bullies only stop when they realize they can't win anymore. And this HOA had been bullying people for years. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for every single homeowner they had ever pushed around. By freezing their funds, I didn't just protect my home. I gave the entire neighborhood power back. The HOA could no longer afford to intimidate, to fine, to threaten. Their reign was over. The aftermath. After that meeting, everything changed. The board scrambled, calling emergency sessions, begging lawyers, even trying to pressure the bank. But it was useless. My ownership was legitimate, and my authority was ironclad. Within weeks, the HOA crumbled. The president resigned. Several board members moved away. And the community, our community, finally breathed again. Neighbors who once felt powerless now felt free. And me, I stayed right where I was. In my home. The home they swore they would take from me. The home they thought I didn't deserve. Hooking to next section. But here's the crazy part. That was just the beginning. What happened after the HOA collapse was something no one could have predicted. Power shifts, secrets uncovered, and betrayals that ran even deeper than I imagined. You might think the story ended there, with the HOA board humiliated, their accounts frozen, and me standing victorious in my home. But let me tell you, when power crumbles, people don't just accept defeat. They claw, they scramble, and sometimes they reveal sides of themselves you never thought existed. What came next wasn't just a collapse of an HOA. It was a storm of secrets, betrayals, and shocking truths that shook our entire neighborhood. The backlash begins. After the board realized I owned their bank, word spread to the community like wildfire. Some neighbors cheered me on. They came by with handshakes, smiles, even baked goods, thanking me for finally standing up to the bullies who had ruled us for years. For the first time, people weren't afraid of the HOA anymore. But not everyone was happy. The board members, especially the president, weren't ready to give up their power. They had built their lives around control, status, and intimidation. And even though their accounts were frozen, they tried everything in their power to fight back. They accused me of fraud. They claimed I was abusing the system. They even tried to rally a group of homeowners to take legal action against me. But here's the problem. When you bully people for years, you don't have many allies left. Almost nobody wanted to defend them. The president's revenge. Still, the president wasn't done. This man was desperate. He started going door to door, spreading lies about me. He told neighbors I was a criminal. He said I hacked into their finances. He claimed my home wasn't even legally mine. One night, I found anonymous flyers taped to mailboxes around the neighborhood, calling me a danger to the community. My blood boiled, but deep down, I wasn't surprised. This was the same man who thought he could destroy families with fines and foreclosures. Of course, he would try to smear me now that he was powerless. But then things took an even darker turn. Uncovering the truth. While reviewing the HOA's financial records at the bank, I started noticing strange transactions. Large sums of money had been moved around, withdrawn in cash, or sent to suspicious accounts. At first, I thought it might just be sloppy bookkeeping. But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. The president had been stealing from the HOA for years. That's right, the man who tried to evict me, the man who fined neighbors for the smallest violations, had been secretly lining his own pockets with community funds. I couldn't believe it. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. Bank statements, transfers, even forged signatures. It was all there. The same man who painted himself as a protector of the neighborhood was nothing more than a thief. The reveal. The next HOA meeting was unforgettable. With neighbors gathered, I stood up and laid out everything. Page after page of documents, showing exactly how the president had been funneling money into his personal accounts. Gasps echoed through the room. People were shocked, angry, betrayed. The president's face went pale. He tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming. One neighbor shouted, "You fined me $500 for offense while you were stealing thousands behind our backs." Another neighbor yelled, "You almost made me lose my home." The anger boiled over. For years, these people had been victims. Now they finally had the truth, and the villain was standing right in front of them. By the end of the meeting, the president was forced to resign on the spot. Some neighbors even started talking about pressing criminal charges. His empire of control had crumbled completely. A community transformed. With the board gone, the neighborhood felt lighter. People started talking to each other more. Instead of being afraid of fines, they painted their houses how they wanted. Kids played in front yards without fear of violations. For the first time, it felt like a real community instead of a prison controlled by a handful of bullies. And me? I wasn't just a guy who stopped the eviction anymore. I was the one who gave the neighborhood freedom. But I'll be honest, it wasn't easy. Taking on people in power always comes with stress, risk, and sleepless nights. I spent hours fighting through paperwork, meetings, and ugly confrontations. And at times, I questioned whether it was worth it. But when I saw the relief in my neighbors' faces, when I heard the kids laughing again without parents looking over their shoulders in fear of fines, I knew I'd do it all over again. The lesson: here's the thing about power. It only works if people believe in it. The HOA had control because everyone thought they had no choice but to obey. But the moment someone challenged them, the truth came out. They were nothing more than bullies with clipboards. And bullies always fall when someone stands tall. My story might sound extreme, but it carries a simple lesson. Never assume the people in power are untouchable. They make mistakes. They hide secrets. And sometimes all it takes is one person pull the right thread to make their entire web unravel. My final showdown. Months later, I ran into the former HOA president at the grocery store. He looked tired, smaller somehow, like the way his lies had finally crushed him. He avoided my eyes, muttered something under his breath, and walked away quickly. And in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I didn't need revenge. I already won the only battle that mattered, protecting my home, my dignity, and my community. He tried to take everything from me, but in the end, he lost everything himself. So when you hear stories about HOA's greedy boards or power-hungry neighbors, remember this. No matter how strong they look, they are not invincible. Sometimes, the very system they use to control you is the same system that can take them down. And if my story proves anything, it's this: never underestimate the quiet person in the room, because you never know what cards they're holding.